Grand Rise. Blessed be to your day. May it be everything you require to create that space that you desire. I got a secret. It's not really a secret. It's something that I realized as I was doing my earlier internal work, doing the work that I needed to do for myself, and really putting myself in a position. Until we realize, and this is the trippiest part about it, until we realize that what we're running away from and what we're running away to are in tandem, you will continuously avoid the lesson. Until we realize that what we are running away from is the same thing that we're running to, we will always miss the lesson. Runaway fugitive. That's the complex before you come into the aspects of your work. You're a runaway fugitive. You're only running away from yourself. You're only running away from yourself and running into yourself. You're only running away from yourself and running to yourself. So everything that you try to get into your space, you're only running to yourself. One of the things that I had to realize in earlier work, doing my earlier shadow work, doing this internal work, and one thing that you're going to come to realize in your shadow work, doing this internal work, simply saying, ooh, shadow work, simply saying, ooh, simply saying it does nothing if you're not applying what you're learning, or if you're not even applying to what you're seeing, learning that lesson. Once again, running away and running to are in tandem. You are running away only to run into the same space. You're not going nowhere. This is one of the things that happens when it comes time for us to do our internal work. What you're noticing now for a lot of people right now, you're in a position where the way things used to work out, the way you used to do things, are not working as much. They're not working the same way. The way that you used to react to things, the way that you used to put yourself in certain positions, the shit you used to create in order to stay in that safety net, you're noticing it doesn't work anymore. You're noticing that you're trying to do things, and especially in the timeline, it's no longer about renting to own. There's no more of this sense. The best way I can put it is, there's no more of the renting to own. There's no more of the, I'm going to rent my life. It's all about ownership. If you haven't noticed over the last, since 2000, we'll just say start back from 2020. You ain't noticed since 2020 till now. And if you really haven't realized that there's 6 months left, 6 months left until 2022. 6 months left until 2022. What have you done? Got to be honest and straightforward with yourself. What have you done? What have you learned? What have you built? These are questions that I regularly ask myself as a point of reflection and reference to understanding where I'm at and understanding the position of now. There's no such thing as the future. The past is simply a thought. There's no such thing as the future. The past is simply a thought. All that exists is now. So what am I doing now in order to bring myself into the greater spectrum of myself? I can't run away. A lot of times we get stuck in that runaway mode. You get stuck in the running away. You get stuck in, I'm going to keep, it's not going to work. It's not going to work. Some of the deepest lessons, deeply rooted lessons that I had to learn within myself was really looking like, damn, just running on empty, running myself ragged to keep bringing myself back to the same space. I know that something simple like my human design, frustration is not my catalyst. If I'm frustrated, that means I'm not in my own space. What do you know about yourself? You're sitting in that position. What are you learning about yourself? Those moments in time when you are to yourself, what are you gravitating towards? Running away from is the same thing as what you're running into. Putting yourself in this space, running from your own shadow until it gets dark. I remember for myself sitting in a space where I would run and run and run. For example, I would go to work from sun up to sundown, and not realizing that was the example of me running away from my shadow. The same way that I woke up is the same way that I went to sleep. Same way that I woke up, it's the same way that I went to sleep. I spent most of my time in that space trying to grab the last bits of that day and feel like I was doing something. Until I realized, like, damn, it's already Friday. Damn, it's already 2 months went by. It's already 3 months went by. Because I was concentrating on the result and not my path. I was concentrating on basically my whole thought process the entire time was transferring my conflicts. Irrational solidarity. Transferring my conflicts. Putting myself in a position to where I always seemed to, in spaces where I was underly spoken. I talked about I dropped a couple posts about that the other day. Being underspoken and overspoken come from the same place. Until you learn that balance. Until then, we'll always be in this state of transferring or transitional conflict. We stay stuck in this irrational solidarity simply by the emotional cues, the points of deflection. I really had to understand that I couldn't run no more. I couldn't be like, ooh, I'm gonna go. No. Because all I was doing was living according to the experiences that I already experienced. Setting in that waiting zone of like, yeah, this is going to happen. This usually happens around this time. So staying in that realm of comfort, I would sit there like, yeah, it's going to happen anyway. I might as well just keep doing what I'm doing. But then I would sit there with myself and beat myself. I would deflect and be like, see, yeah, don't nobody understand and nobody really know this and this part right here. But at the reality of it, to myself with it, I had to really sit there with myself, make those conversations with myself. I made a post yesterday during the Father's Day aspect. I was like, have you had that chance, or have you even went through the process to forgive and then say thank you to what happened to you? It's part of the shadow work process. That's one of the deeper parts of the shadow work process. It's easy to say, I forgive for you to not know what you did in all of these aspects, but it's a whole nother level when I was able to sit there and thank my pops, thank my mother, thank my uncles, thank people that did some fucked up shit. I was able to thank them because without them being in that space to bring that to me, I wouldn't have had something to learn. I wouldn't have had nothing to teach me. I wouldn't have became the teacher. I would have stayed in that student position. I wouldn't have evolved into the higher aspect. I would have stayed in that position. Subconsciously creating, and remember your subconscious is rooted in that unseen, those traumatic events, subconsciously creating spaces or co-creating spaces that matched where I was at. Places to run away to. Places to hide at. Places to allow everything to seamlessly go away. But then I was faced with it. Those shits were the biggest obstacles. The same places that I create, the same places that you create to hide in are the same obstacles that you're going to face. This is that reflection. The same things that you create to hide in are the same obstacles that you must face internally. The same trains of thought that I was stuck in. I didn't realize that every thought that I had was my past. Remember, I've always said, like, when you're thinking, what are you listening to? Because every time you think, you're listening. So that means every time you think, you're listening. And if my thoughts are as soon as I have a thought, it's of the past. What am I listening to? Only thing that exists is now. It's going to get heavier. Mercury retrograde's over tomorrow. Everybody's like, oh my God, yay, Mercury retrograde's over. Truth about Mercury retrograde is it brought a lot of shit up. Mercury retrograde brought a lot of shit up. So now you got to face all of that shit. Everything that came up during Mercury retrograde, that's the shit you're going to have to deal with. That's the shit that you're going to have to tap into and deal with. That's the stuff you're going to have to work on. All of those conversations that you have not been having and dealing with and facing, that's what you're facing. Or you're going to go right all the way back around to 2022, another Mercury retrograde going in, and it's going to be even heavier because you stuck in that space. It's time to deal with those things. You cannot go there. Remember, there is no future. There's only now. There is the past is your thoughts. So what are you running away from? You're running into the darkness trying to build things, but you got to realize that the things that are in your darkness, we always getting into that, the things of your unseen are what create your space. They're what fuel your intentions. They're what fuel your manifestations. They're what fuel your affirmations. That's what fuels them. That's why whenever you're saying an affirmation, I'm beautiful, I'm beautiful, I'm beautiful, I'm love, I'm love, I'm love, I'm peace, I'm peace, I'm peace. And the first thing that come up is your phone ring and somebody that is not based on peace. First thing pop up, and that's your sign. That's is giving you the lesson that your lesson's right there. Your lesson's right there for you. But you want to I'm going to keep going back now. You keep saying that I want to build to this level. You're in the space right now. I can tell you from this standpoint that just for me being able to build the platform, be the therapist, be the teacher, be the healer, be the shaman, be what I am, just to build the physical took 4 years. Took 4 years. It took 4 years for me to build all of this aspects. And I'm thankful and I'm grateful for I'm grateful for everything that was a part of this lesson. I'm thankful for all of it. But before this point, it was almost 6 or 7 years. 6 or 7 years of going into that dark space. Sometimes really, really unwillingly. That means I didn't know I was going through it. And in other times, I was like, okay, cool, it's time for me to accept it. Just to get to this point. So I had to suspend, remember we talked about that Friday, I had to suspend the disbelief of time not existing. I had to remove myself from the suspended disbelief that my past was the only thing that I had to tap into and work with. I had to remove myself from the suspended disbelief that I can make anything else happen because of those old narratives. And I had a lot of those old narratives. One of my oldest narratives was, if I felt like I didn't have money, I didn't have power. If I felt like I wasn't being able to do things for people, I felt like I didn't have any power. I didn't feel worthless. I felt worthless. But in reality, it was simply my avoidance wounds, my trauma wounds, the conversations I wasn't having. Hell, even when I thought that I dealt with some shit. Give you an example. Even when I thought I dealt with the wounds of my pops, the wounds aspects of my pops. And I remember when I met my father and I was up in New York with my father. So I was like, okay, cool. I'm even in that space where I was like, yeah, I'm getting the best life that I need to have at this point in time. My pops was the key to understanding a lot of other shit that I didn't know about myself. Until then, the shadow that always came up and irritated me was niggas just like my pops. Hell, chicks just like my pops. The aspects of my mother, the aspect of the mother figures that I clung to in that space. Until I went back and had that conversation and was able to sit there and be like, Mom, I forgive you. Mom, I thank you for everything that you did. For you're going through the things that you went through, and the things that you went through gave me the guidelines to what I had to understand what I was going through. I don't blame you. I thank you. That shit opened up shit in my heart chakra that I never even knew was there. I'm talking about in 2005 was the last time that I cried up until like 2013. The last time tears fell from my face. Unless they were in anger. Unless they were in desperation. That was the only time. But other than that, like, I didn't have a real moment because I shut that part of myself off. And I kept running away from it. Kept putting myself in these other positions. Not dealing with things. Yeah, some good things happened, but it was only in the material. It was only in the physical. It was only sequestering my urge. So as long as my urges were met, as long as I could pretend that I was good, I was good. Until eventually all that shit fell apart. And I've talked about that in the mini lectures and in the podcast episodes. Which gets into this week's episode of the God Hour podcast. I'm going to be finishing working on it today. We're getting into transparent perception. For most of us, we come into a space where we're realizing based on reaction where we're going to have to understand that there's two extreme points. And I've talked about these extreme points earlier on before, but I want to get deeper into them this week. There's observational offense and there's observational defense. These are the 2 points where a lot of times when we're stuck in our traumatic cycles that we'll play ourselves from. Observational offense is trying to go ahead. Observational offense, the best way to explain it is whenever there's something about you that is wrong, something that you have not dealt with, something that you have really not dealt with, one of your flaws, one of the falls or the focal points. And you automatically make jokes about it. Or you automatically put yourself in a space where you talk about it first so nobody else can say it. That's being overspoken or trying to prove that you have dealt with something, but you really haven't dealt with it. Then there's on the other end of this spectrum is observational defense. This is when we create our entire space based on defending the identity. Or it's basically like Stockholm Syndrome. You're defending the identity of the traumatic experience. So you're sitting there saying, my mother was sick, or my mother, the nigga she was with hit her upside the head, or my father, if my mom did this, then my father wouldn't have left, and you keep telling yourself that same story, you're in a space of observational defense. And I'm going to give you a trippy aspect about looking in your current space. One of the things about looking in your current space, either you, somebody that you know in that space, is going through the same aspect and you're seeing yourself play out in that space. That's the reason it comes into your space. Something that you have not dealt with. When we look at it from that angle and become transparent in the perception, that transparency in our perception, we actually can learn to move forward. Everything down here is working for you. We have to get away from this aspect of the irrational solidarity. A lot of us are stuck in that space. We look at the black community. We look at the spiritual community. A lot of motherfuckers are stuck in this irrational solidarity based on deflection. That means if I got father issues, somebody else got mother issues, somebody else got a lack of father issues, whatever traumas that they have, those emotional aspects become deflections and where we find our solidarity in. So we find a common enemy to remain in that space. That's how you build in your space. And then the next thing we're going to get into this week, we're going to be getting into that transitional conflict. We get into transitional conflict. If you don't deal with it with yourself, all you're doing is transferring it into other spaces. That's that same thing with that solidarity aspect. So now you got people that think, I'm going to give you an example of that. You in a great relationship, great job, great whatever. Great job, great relationship. Just got this great aspect coming into your life for you to learn from. Now for you to not deal with the conflict based on this, going into that irrational solidarity, you have other individuals or conduits that you have created or co-created with in order for you to transfer the conflict. So now you in a good relationship, but your homegirl ain't. You in a good space, but your homeboys ain't. And then you keep those in that irrational solidarity in order to give yourself this feeling that you are not being rejected. It's how we build. It's how you build yourself, just to keep yourself in there. And it's a real subconscious factor, based on observational offense, observational defense. It's time for you to do this work. You can't run away from it anymore. You can run all day, but you can run away all day, but you're only running back into it. The same shit that you're running away from is the same shit that you're running into. The same shit that you're running away from, you're running into. It's time to come face to face. It's time to allow all those identities to fall away and really deal with those aspects that you got hidden. That inner child, it's time to bring the inner child out and let them into the space. Let them lead you. Let them guide you. We all seen The Shining. We all seen Dr. Sleep. You didn't see it. You just seen the little kid that leads the person around into the maze. That's where you at right now. You got one or two choices. Either you're gonna, you can continuously complain, but if you're not willing, and I saw this in a post, if you're not willing to invest in the change that is needed for you to move forward, nothing can help you. The only things that will give you a false sense of help will keep that false sense of that identity, keep you that false sense of identity for you to end up keep doing it. This ain't no more, I'm going to rent my life anymore. This is about ownership. That LLC mentality that I was getting into. I desire you to become the fucking best. I desire you to tap into your fucking greatness and be the fucking best. I come from a space of that same aspect. So that's what I desire. God Hour Podcast. This week's episode is transparent projection. It's gonna be out 6 a.m. Little secret note, it's out at 5:55 a.m., but most people ain't up by the time. It's up at 6 a.m. Be dropped on 6 a.m. Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcasts, iTunes. Y'all see the streams on that. This Friday, we getting into Wanderlust. I'm going to let y'all know a little about that throughout the week. And everything from consultations, readings, all my readings are mini consultations, up to the big boy consultation about that shadow work, getting that shadow work therapy in play, the life coaching or the life coaching aspect in play. Hit me up in the inbox. I desire you to be the best. Feeling all warm and shit. I'm feeling all warm inside. Feeling all warm and hot inside. It's time to step away and step into your darkness. I love you. You love us. Ashe.